So, as the man said, we're going to talk to you today about some technology and tools to help make your lives better, things you should at least know about. We're going to do this presentation in two parts. So with me up here first, I'll be doing part one, solving some problems using technology, assuming that technology itself is not your problem. In this kind of format, what I'm going to try to do with us here today is to go through a problem-solution style format. So we'll talk about a problem you may be experiencing and about some technology that might help with that. As a guy working for a software company, I talk to a lot of different companies in scaffolding and industrial services and EPCs and GCs and all the way upstream. And as soon as they hear I'm with a software company, they immediately start complaining to me about all their technology problems, whether or not there's anything I can help with. So I decided that that might be a good basis for this presentation, to talk to some things that are outside the realm of what I normally do, but do have some exposure to. So to get us started with this problem-solution style format, we'll start with a sample problem, one that many of us may be experiencing today, hangovers. And you'll see as we go through this, some of the problems may not be immediately tied to technology, but we'll work tech in and find some creative solutions. So one of the cool things about technical innovation is that it touches on all aspects of life. So hangovers, you've got some cool innovations around energy drinks and detox kits. You have an app like Uber that they'll deliver mobile IV drips to your hotel room door to get you rehydrated and back in the saddle. And of course, some people tell you just stop drinking, lay off, buddy. I'm more about keeping the party going. So that's the kind of advice I'll be trying to give you, things you're actually going to be willing to use, and maybe you'll learn a few things along the way. So jumping into the actual problems today, the first thing I want to touch on is customer engagement. So a lot of my customers will talk to me about how they're trying to leverage technology a bit better. One of the things I'd say most people have, but I'll do a little informal, unscientific survey here, is by a show of hands, how many people have a website for their business? Okay, thank God, we've got a good basis to start this off here. I was going to be worried if I didn't see a lot of hands. So your website, I'm guessing a lot of you use it to put up your contact information, a couple photos, your address, that sort of thing. But your website can actually be a very powerful selling tool, well beyond just putting yourself out there in a basic way, if you use it right. So oftentimes in this industry, we're busy pounding the pavement, servicing customer jobs, and meanwhile, new customers and prospects are out there looking for you. But they're doing that on the internet. They're doing searches, using keywords and things like that, trying to find you, and your website is there to receive that information. So if it's fine-tuned in the right way, it can be a very powerful tool. And the way I kind of present this is your website should do three things for you. It should make you discoverable, it should make you believable, and it should make you accessible. So the first thing, discoverability. Another informal survey here. How many people know what SEO is, or search engine optimization? Cool, awesome. So I might be boring you here for the first part of this then, since you already know a little bit about it. I'll go through this briefly. SEO is something we could talk about for hours. There's a lot of technicalities and nuance. Once upon a time, search engine optimization was just piling in as many industry keywords into your website as possible. So if you remember old school websites, there's some that are still around today, you'd scroll to the bottom of the page and you'd see a wall of text. And so in this industry, and in this city, you might see scaffolding in Montreal, access solutions in Montreal, just piled up endlessly, a wall of gibberish. Search engines got a lot smarter, so you can't get away with that anymore. They use SEO to kind of try to still cheat the system and try to optimize your website for searchability. So in order to beat the system these days, you have to make a website that actually works, because search engines are really trying to be answer engines. What they do is, what search engines do rather, is they're going to read your website effectively. They're going to use algorithms to try to figure out if the person searching for the terms such as scaffolding and access is going to be able to find the answers to their questions on your website. So a few key items there: usability, providing clear answers, not just fluff, not just generic mission statements, but talking a bit about what you do as a business. And that leads into content, having key phrases and statements and information that provide actual answers to problems, showing that you have a bit of an understanding of your industry. Cross-linking is another important thing there. So not just having your website in isolation, but utilizing social media, so Facebook, Yelp reviews, writing articles in industry publications, and having those things link back to your website. You probably have noticed that when you search for anything on the web, really, Wikipedia oftentimes comes up as your first search result. That's because a lot of websites cross-link back to Wikipedia. So any opportunity you have to be that cross-link destination from other sites and services can be a big help. One thing I want to highlight here, though, is advertising. A lot of people invest in Google AdWords and things like that. it's very valuable, but it's not actually tied to SEO directly. So you can actually, on the cheap, have a website that hits that top level Google search result without necessarily spending money on advertising. That second thing I mentioned, believability, actually a lot of overlap with SEO. Writing articles and writing content, blog posts, testimonials, job profiles, things like that, that just build out your website and add more depth beyond just your homepage and your phone number. So making sure you've got a lot of content there, something for customers to dig into when they're searching around for information, that they start to trust you and trust your expertise because you have a lot of experience, of course, in the industry, you know a lot of stuff. Put that into writing. You can hire content writers to help you actually write it up. Make sure you're building that into your website. And then lastly, accessibility. Making sure you have a clear call to action on your website, making sure you're putting your contact information up front makes that website that much more effective. I do a lot of searching for researching customers and researching people in the industry, and I'm surprised by how often on a website I can't figure out how to get in touch with somebody. I've got to dig deep and find a random contact form or something like that. It's very helpful to have that contact information presented front and center. Related to that, one thing I really love a lot of companies doing is putting photos and key contact personnel information on your website. So when you go to the Contact Us, you see the team, you feel like you get to know people a bit better. It's a really powerful way of building trust and building a bit of a personal investment with the person who's searching for you to hopefully get them to make that phone call to you. One last thing on that as well, and this one really surprised me sometimes, is you have sites like Google and Yahoo have business registers as well. So if you've ever used a local search on maps, for example, to look for a restaurant or something like that, the same holds true for businesses that service other businesses. So making sure that you're in the Google Business Directory can be a big help. Anytime that I'm traveling around the world visiting clients and things like that, I'll pull up Google Maps and search for scaffold companies in the area. And I'm surprised by how many high-profile companies that I know I'm going to see and I know where they're at aren't even listed on maps. So really useful resource to take advantage of. Doesn't cost you anything, takes 5 minutes to fill it out. So related to that then, so you've got inbound leads and things like that coming in to your website. How do you manage all that? How do you track all the interactions and customer relationships that you're developing? How many of you are familiar with a CRM, or customer relationship management software? By show of hands. Okay, a few. How many of you are tracking customer interactions in any capacity beyond what's going on in your head? Whether it's spreadsheets, non-software, so a couple hands going up. Okay, so you might have the luck of being able to swoop in on a contract the last possible second and close things out, often enough. That would be great. But oftentimes you're building relationships over the course of many years. So in order to actually maintain those and track them all the way to successfully closing a deal with somebody, CRM software can help. And what I like to think of it as a 24/7 secretary for every member of your staff, whether they're sales, whether they're customer facing in any capacity. I put a couple of examples up here, and I'll note something I should have mentioned earlier is I'm not going to be talking product specific too much. I'll bring up a few examples, go through them in some little level of detail, but it's something that I leave to you to do some research because I'm not here to give you a sales pitch on any one product. Not that I hold stock in any of these guys or anything. So what a CRM software allows you to do is manage end-to-end all the relationships that you're establishing with your customers and business partners and other people. And they range in scale from Salesforce being one of the biggest ones that I imagine many people have heard of, which is potentially costly but highly customizable and very flexible to be developed for a niche business, all the way down to Pipedrive, which is a $12 a month one that I tend to use and rather enjoy. I find it a really easy tool to use. So what does CRM do for you, for those that haven't heard of it? It tracks every activity. So when you send an email out of your email client, when you place a phone call, particularly from your smartphone with an app, it'll automatically hot link those things to your customer relationships. So you have an account and a real-time stream of everything going on with the customer. What that enables you to do is turn all of your employees into customer experts in every account. So when a phone call comes through and the person who answers it doesn't necessarily know what's going on with that customer, they can look it up in the CRM and provide meaningful information and give a meaningful response to that customer without having to say, sorry, you're dealing with Joe, he's not in right now, I'll take a message for him. It makes you a little bit more responsive to make sure you can stay on top of your client accounts. It also automates all your documentation. So again, that complete record of what's going on with the customer. If you ever had that situation where your star salesperson who's maintaining all your major accounts leaves the company, this is your opportunity to store that information someplace so you haven't just watched a book of business walk out the door. So very powerful in that regard. It also gives you better sales forecasting and better opportunity awareness. So being able to look ahead and see what deals are coming down the pipeline, what contracts are in the works, so you can plan ahead a bit more, and again, managing those relationships is key. One really cool thing with CRM also is, again, it integrates with all your different apps. So if you're using Gmail or Outlook or using Skype to make phone calls and things like that, you can tie all this together. And so every time you perform an activity, it's automatically being documented for you. The gist of all that is that we're so focused day to day on projects and contracts and those dealings on the business side of things that sometimes it's easy to forget that the people are what really drive, and the relationships that we have with those people are what really drive our business. So managing that in a CRM allows you to track the big picture of all those relationships and really make the most of them. So related to people, resource management, whether they're human resources or equipment resources. So there are a lot of different tools out there for tracking both sides of that, people and of course in our industry, which is very equipment intensive, software to manage our gear as well. A few cool things that have evolved, so I'm assuming everybody's tracking timesheets and things like that. Is anybody using electronic payroll systems that have like a hardware component, like a mobile time clocks and things like that? Anybody doing that? I see a couple hands, okay. So what about, have you ever had the problem with like buddy punching, where you think somebody's clocking in and out or filling out a timesheet, but it's not necessarily that person? Has that ever been an issue for anybody, not knowing for certain who's clocking in and out? So there's been a lot of advancements with time clocks, going beyond the punch card into biometrics. So the one there on the far left, the U-Attend system, comes in a couple flavors. You've got face scanning, so facial recognition, as well as biometric reading of fingerprints and things like that. So relatively painless, there's no blood draws or anything like that, just a basic little fingerprint swipe. And you're able to confirm that the person who's punching in and out is actually the person that they're saying they are. So it helps to eliminate that buddy punching or buddy clock punching issue. Mobile timesheets, so job costing can be a challenge, especially allocating or tracking specific hours to a given job. So an example, timesheet mobile, but really there's a ton of these out there for your smartphone. Your phone's got a GPS device in it that you use for mapping and navigation all the time. You can also use that for geofencing a job site. So when you go onto a job site, you can kind of make out in that screenshot there, there's a notice that you're leaving a job site. Would you like to clock out of it? So the ability to, on the fly, on your phone, identify when you're walking on and off a given job. So your hours are logged for payroll purposes, but it's also telling you where those hours were logged against to make job costing a much easier task to manage. And then for people, whether they're teams or individuals, or oftentimes more so vehicles, cranes, boom lifts, things like that. And I just remembered I have a laser here I can point. You've got stuff like VWork app, different things that work like a Gantt chart, where you can visualize hours, days, shifts, where a resource was allocated to know exactly where it was, and better plan where you're going to need that truck across the region that you're operating. Now, on the equipment side, so I talked a little bit about there just a moment ago about visual planning for larger equipment, larger assets like trucks and things. You've got a lot of small bits and pieces in Scaffold. So tracking bulk inventory can be a big struggle because there's a million different little pieces you track and all the different product codes and sizes and manufacturers and things like that. Another informal survey here, how many people track in any capacity your bulk asset, your Scaffold inventory? Fair number of hands. So, and how many people are just like looking out the window and saying, yeah, it's there. I've got it, good enough. I see some proud hands in the back, yeah. So how's that working out? It depends on how the size of your fleet, the complexity of your business. So tracking that inventory and the processes around it can be a big benefit. Now, those of you who know me and know the kind of work I do are probably guessing this is turning into a sales pitch. I promise it's not going to be. All that I'm going to tell you is that the right system will give you complete integration. So sometimes people think, well, inventory tracking is a bunch of data entry and what benefit do I get? Well, if you're using the right software, it automates a lot of things downstream too. So from the initial request to quotes to shipments, inventory, invoice automation, all that stuff, that can be tied together in one system. But the big thing I want to stress here is I don't care how you track it, get something in place to start managing it. Because when you do finally start transitioning into more complex systems, going from paper or nothing can be something of an arduous task. So it's just an important concept to start considering. The last section I want to touch on, and this is definitely my personal favorite, and we're going to have some fun, is the concept of staying relevant and competing. Now, the question that I posed there at the bottom of this slide, how do I compete or how do you compete with your customers? It's an odd one, and it might be considered a touchy subject, but I'll just kind of dive right into it and see how you feel about it. So I'd mentioned earlier I talked to a lot of different companies upstream and downstream. So we deal with the smallest, just small-scale rental shops, all the way up to the BPs and Exxons and those guys of the world. So I get to talk to a lot of people up and downstream, and I've learned a few things about how they're doing things at the top level. On the construction and maintenance side, there's a lot of modeling, 3D modeling software being used to, whether it's plan new construction or track maintenance, being able to completely visualize full constructability modeling, they call it, so that something can be virtual created and then executed to that plan, and every phase of work being established. So they've had a lot of success with this at the structural steel level and rebar detailing and concrete and wiring plans and piping and all that good stuff. And so having saved all this money doing that kind of thing, owners, operators, EPCs, GCs are starting to look downstream and say, well, can we apply these technologies to temporary works? And to give you an idea of what these technologies look like, you might have heard a few of these names. Companies like Autodesk that make AutoCAD also have a product called Navisworks. You've got Trimble, Bentley, Intergraph. And the results of these kinds of things are producing full detailed 3D models. And again, I want to stress that phrase, constructability modeling. The whole idea here is build the thing before you build it, so you know exactly what you're doing on site. You don't have people staying around figuring things out, taking guesses, causing delays and cost overruns. And for everything from commercial construction to industrial, plant maintenance and construction, vessel modeling and construction as well. So upstream, there's some cutting edge stuff being deployed, and the cool things about these are really great at doing detailed construction and facility modeling, but they're terrible for scaffolding. They're not designed for individual piece-by-piece assemblies and access modeling. So to talk about what you can do in scaffolding, we've got to take a bit of a step back and bring ourselves up to the present in terms of the technology. So since the dawn of time, we've had 2D, cave paintings all the way up until your modern elevation drawings and sections for scaffold, which are pretty cool. They're relatively easy to put together. Sketching in 2 dimensions, you've got a sheet of paper, that's 2D, I've got a pencil, hey, I can create an image. But oftentimes in it being handmade, there's a lot of duplicate work. You're having to recreate the same image, do a section, do an elevation, do another elevation, over and over again. And for people who aren't used to reading blueprints or drawings, especially if they're not accustomed to the trade for which they're reading the drawings, 2 dimensions can be very difficult to understand. Not to mention that if you're actually deriving materials from this, you're having to count everything individually by hand or in your head, because you don't have a true assembly of those pieces. You're looking at concepts in 2 dimensions. So fortunately, computers have come along and given us 3D modeling. So now you can actually put together a constructible model, like we were just talking about, of the structure that you're trying to build. And that gives you the ability to really get in and understand the real-life applications of what you're modeling, to explore it, to do things like safety reviews and actually measure off every single space in a structure, and also to communicate to people who are, like for example in scaffolding, to create to an access solution user who may not be able to understand a 2D drawing. Now meanwhile, in the upstream world, they've moved into 4D and 5D. How many of you have heard of BIM, or Building Information Management? So quite a few hands, cool. How many of you are using BIM? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about how this gets used. So I was gonna say I was looking for like one hand. I think I do see a hand. Awesome. So 4D and 5D. So we live in a 3D world, of course, 3 dimensions, but you start to incorporate the idea that, well, a construction project doesn't happen overnight. You don't go from greenfield to finished building. So you add the 4th dimension, you add time to this, and now you can do phased work modeling and begin to see what it's going to look like shift by shift, day by day, week by week, and start anticipating delays and start making sure everybody's in the right place at the right time to get things done. And then 5D, the 5th dimension there is data. So you say, well, we've gone on the effort of modeling this thing so we can build it. We're going to have to maintain this facility as well. So we want to know what the wiring plan is, what it's made up of, you know, what gauge of steel is used, that sort of thing. All sorts of little bits of information about a structure, so that you can then use that further downstream or reproduce with it. So you might look at it and say, well, we want to build this same structure or this same vessel or this same facility down the track. Now we know exactly what it's made up of, so we can do that work again. So bringing this back to scaffolding then, because we're not necessarily, a lot of us are still in the 2D world. The 3D tools exist. You're able to do 3D modeling on screen, so being able to automate scaffold design and start to visualize in a fully 3D environment. And then I know there was another presentation on, I think it might have been scrubbed, regarding virtual reality. Well, this applies to scaffold as well. So you do have the ability to get virtual reality exposure. And there's a couple of applications for this. So 3D on screen is a great way to do your design work and sit there and piece stuff together. Virtual reality is more of an immersive environment, which a lot of people see this and they say, well, okay, I'm going to step into a scaffold in a box or something like that. I don't know if you've come by our booth and played with some of the cardboard headsets we've got. Come by, I've got a few to offload so I can lighten my bags for the trip home. So you're able to go in a fully immersive mode and really walk through the job and really experience what a scaffold looks like up close and personal, which is all well and good when you can do this stuff in your head, but for a customer who doesn't necessarily process this in their head, they're able to really understand the solution that you're offering them, and they're able to better explore that. So we've seen the emergence now of virtual reality into these scenarios to really help communication and collaboration. Now, the next step with 3D, throwing another acronym, MR, mixed reality, is the ability to take those virtual models and structures and bring them into the real world. So in the constructability, going back to completed projects and facilities, we're seeing applications of this to where a rebar detail model, for example, is brought into the work site and dropped in front of someone. And I'll show you what this looks like in a second through the view, but basically you have these headsets that these guys are wearing up here. And you're able to see through that headset a model that's dropped into the real world around you. So the applications, as they're still being felt out, admittedly, even upstream, they still figure out how they're going to leverage mixed reality. But just like 3D before it, and virtual reality before that has come since then, these things are taking hold as industry trends. So, of course, you can do this with Scaffold as well, the ability to drop a model into place. And the applications that we're seeing take hold are things like this sample here, a collaborative environment where instead of building a scale model of the project and sitting on a table and walking around it, you're able to pop on a headset, see a 3D rendering of what you're working on, whether it's a building, a scaffold, or really whatever. And then if you need to make any changes, you can do those in real time in your design tool and bring them right back in the real world and explore them. So we'll take a minute and switch over here and actually show you a quick little demo of what mixed reality looks like in the real world.
So how many people in here have had Ali's cardboard goggles on and seen the scaffold demonstration? It's amazing, isn't it? The thing about the VR goggles is you're not able to see anything else. And so when you put the VR goggles on, it's probably best to be sitting. I've found that sitting in a swivel chair is best because when you turn and turn back, if there's motion, it will knock you over. It's just something that happens. What Ali's putting on his head right now is called a HoloLens, and it is not a VR goggle. He can see you right now. He can see through the lenses that are going to project the image. And so it's going to take a minute to boot up because what he's wearing on his head is essentially a Microsoft Surface built into that headset. He has a pair of lenses inside that he can see through, but that receive a projection. So it also has a camera in it, obviously, so he sees what you're doing. Okay, and so when the image is projected, not only do you see the image, but you can see past it if it's not opaque, and you can walk around, look, almost feel. We're getting there. It's a $2,500 item right now, so it's a little expensive.
You're selling them cheap, they're like $3,000.
Yeah, and okay, so $3,000. So what'll happen over the next year or two is the adult entertainment industry will get a hold of this. It'll bring the prices way down. PlayStation will pick it up, and then we'll all be able to utilize this stuff for $450 in about a year and a half.
Not even. End of year, actually. The next generation is coming out about $500. So right now, this is a complete onboard. Thanks, by the way, for that. And I was going to say the adult entertainment joke. I was tempted to make that joke, but in a room full of erection specialists, I don't know if I'm going to get away with it. So always wanted to make that joke at one of these things. Great, now I've done it. So yeah, this is a complete onboard computer, and I know I look so cool right now, so I can totally see you guys snickering under your breath.
He's geeking out.
Yeah, I love this thing. So you're able to see yourselves, and you're able to see what I'm seeing, which is a menu superimposed on you here. Getting back to the point about the whole $500 thing, by the end of the year, we're going to have this same hardware for about $500 because it'll be driven by the computer, streaming wirelessly. Because right now, this is just wirelessly communicating over the hotel network to the screen, which is going up there for you to see it. So we'll pull up, and I should explain before I do this, otherwise you'll think I've gone crazy. This is controlled by voice commands and hand gestures. So I'm going to pull up an app I've got running in the background here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start it up from scratch. There we go. So that'll take a minute to load up there. You're seeing probably about a 5-ish second delay over the wireless here. And you should be able to see a menu of scaffold models. There we go. I'm trying to watch you on the screen here to see what you're seeing. So what I can do is I can use a touch gesture to pick out the thing I'm looking at, and that'll load up the model. Takes a minute to render that. And so you should be seeing a facade that's just dropped right in front of me. So as I mentioned, there's voice commands as well. So I can say a thing like scale down. Scale down. There we go. Hasn't had its coffee yet either. Scale down. And then I can use move mode to pinch and move that object. And I'll try to go slow because I know watching it over the camera can sometimes be a little disorienting there. So how are you guys doing with that? Anybody getting nauseous yet? No, not yet? Cool. So you guys should be able to see a model that I've dropped into space right here, right?
Yes.
And so I can take a look at this, just like we'd 3D printed or built this model, and walk around it and inspect the scaffold. So virtual reality would allow us to walk through this scaffold first person, climb the stairs and everything. So if I go scale up, I think I might be getting microphone feedback, scale up. Actually, let's just go for broke. Actual scale. Yeah, it's having trouble picking up all the echo.
It's scaled up twice.
Actual scale. There we go. All right, where'd it go? There we go. So now we're standing under this thing. So you should be seeing that on the screen there any second. So I've jumped this up to actual size. Now the problem with this is that if I've had a couple of drinks and I try to walk on that stair, I'm going to go straight through it into the wall. So that's why virtual reality is important, is we can put some, in the safety of goggles, we can walk through this by pressing a button as opposed to trying to walk through the real world. But this allows us to really get a sense of scale. And then if we say scale down about 700 times, it'll come back down to a manageable size. Main menu. All right, so let's look at something smaller just for a sec, just to give you an idea of different types of stuff. So really anything you can model in certain software that I can't say the name of here and now, that you can do in mixed reality. There we go. Sometimes you lose where the model is, so you should see that in front of you in the moment. So another example, pedestrian stair over a little canal. Rotate mode. So we can spin this thing around, move it wherever we want, and it's a lot of fun. Not to mention, though, that if you imagine that either you've got a bunch of people with headsets or you have, there's camera rigs you can use as well, so you can watch a screen and see the camera seeing this. That would allow you to also collaborate without having everybody wearing a bunch of dorky headsets. So there's a bunch of different ways to utilize it. And as for the applications, like I mentioned upstream, this is starting to get used for, you can imagine that last model where I had it on a building facade, imagine that that's also the fully detailed, the detailed rendering of the building itself. And you could peel away layers and see what the rebar looks like and the piping behind that and things like that. So it really gives the ability to look at a complete project from the building envelope down to the guts of the building all the way out to temporary works, and pick apart what you want to look at phase by phase and crew by crew and company by company. So that's a little bit about mixed reality that's coming out. So let me get this thing off here. For anybody who doesn't know, we've got a booth in the expo floor, so come by and play with this thing. We got to get our $3,000 worth of entertainment out of this thing, so come by and have fun with it. And so what I would like to leave you with is just a general idea. Technology is your friend. A lot of people I talk to tend to be a little averse to it, understandably. But there's a lot of technological advancements we've already experienced that have made the industry better. So whether it is software to manage your customer contacts as opposed to using your little black book, or a visual scheduler as opposed to a whiteboard in your office, there's a lot of cool technologies that you can leverage to run a more efficient business, and not to mention having a few fun toys, which I think would be a good opportunity to hand off to you.
Okay. How do you follow a 3D?
Maestro?
Yeah, thank you. So Ali was kind enough to leave this slide up here, and there's a rule about presenting for the SAIA. You can't have your logo in it. We built this presentation on 2 different coasts. I did the gadgets and all the cool stuff. Ali, well, all right, Ali did the cool stuff. That thing is just awesome. But if you notice on the left there, there's a picture of one of my scaffold trucks. And earlier in Ali's portion of the presentation, he mentioned Google AdWords and SEO and things like that. And so if you have someone that does this, and we do, we have a marketing team, we call it Eric. And Eric's job is to keep Superior at the top of the search engines. And so Ali, in putting his presentation together, went on Google and typed in scaffold truck. And what he got was Superior, little old Superior Scaffold in Philadelphia, a scaffold truck. And he said, well, I can't use that, it has a logo on it. So he went to the next image. It's another Superior truck, and another, and another, and another. And so if you can figure out the game, you can keep yourself present even in markets that don't do you any good at all. All right. Somebody told me I had to put Caddyshack in here, so I did. So people make fun of this guy because he still has a dumb phone, and he thinks it's awesome because, well, it doesn't crash and it won't crack. But if your boss thinks that this is a good thing, you guys are in trouble. We're all in trouble. All right, so the little things that make life easier. I thought we
Come
were.
on, man.
Yeah, you're supposed to take this slide out. I'm not doing that one. How many people in here know that B-Access makes a cup holder for modular staging? I got 2 hands, and they're related. That's awesome. All right, so mission accomplished. You guys now know of the existence of a tool for every scaffold guy should know about. So I teach SAIA Competent Person classes, and more often than not, one of the students says, I forgot my glasses. And so I have a box of safety glasses with reading magnifiers in it, bifocals, different magnifications. Anybody in here aware of the existence of safety glasses with reading lenses? Well, now you all are. They cost about 50 cents more than a pair of glasses without readers in them. So for $1.30, your aging workforce does not have to remove their safety glasses in order to see or to purchase really expensive prescription safety glasses. Texting. Anybody in here not text? For business, I should say. Oh, Alan? Okay. So everybody's doing it. There is a ton of information traveling back and forth via text. And the reason we do it is, unlike voicemail and phone calls, that text message goes out and it sits there. And if somebody receives a text message and they look at it, it's been delivered. If they don't look at it, the next time they pick up their phone, they're going to look at it. And so texting is a way that we can be assured that that person's going to get that message, they're going to reply to it, and they're going to bring it back. And so we don't miss calls, and we don't have to deal with voicemail. So there's a way that you can send a text message from your email program. So if you have a cell phone number and you know the person's carrier, all cell phones have a hidden email address, and it's the phone number and then however the carrier handles email. So in this case, the phone number at mms.att.net, that looks like an email address, but that's how a text message is delivered to a phone. And so everybody who's using ATT can know this one. I'll give you a list of as many of the other carriers as I knew about. And so what can we do with this? You can send text messages from your email program. You can create groups. You can, groups such as Scaffold Builders or drivers or something like that. We can send group reminders via text message. And the beauty of this is it's not a group text. In other words, how many people in here have been caught in the group text monster that you can't get out of, and at 4 o'clock in the morning you're still getting messages? What this does is it sends an individual email to each one of the phones. So if anybody replies to your text message, it comes back to your email program, which means you can use your rules setting in your email program to save this stuff automatically, to give you alerts that somebody's replied to it. So we send out a reminder. Toolbox Talk due today. So you create a group called Foreman, you put all of their numbers in there, email the Foreman group, and off it goes. We use it for text blasts for safety and for information. So 2 times a week, I put together a Twitter-size piece of safety information. I send it off to the entire carpenter, foreman, and scaffold builder group, and they get it, or I do the drivers or the yard guys. Simple stuff. Extreme heat today. Stay hydrated. Housekeeping things like keep your work area cordoned off from pedestrians. Now, announcements, job canceled due to weather. So you can you can just say, hey, the 5 guys that were on this job, we're going to send them a message to tell them to turn around and head back. Foreman meeting, July 28th at 2 p.m. You can create a nice meeting in Microsoft Office and send it out, and 80% of your guys in the field are never going to do anything with it. But if you send them a text message that tells them to be in the office Friday at 2 p.m., then they understand. So OSHA's requirement for training includes the supervisor delivering the information, giving the workers the opportunity to ask questions regarding the information they've just heard. Okay, the supervisors then answer the questions, and then records are kept. And so that, in a nutshell, is a tiny little, it's what OSHA considers training to be. And so we all follow that format. You may realize that, you may not, but toolbox talk is a piece of information we send out to the field. Our foreman gives that information to his workers. They ask him questions, he answers those questions. They all sign off that they got it, it comes back. That's a training. Well, if you use text messages for small bits of training, when that's all compiled together, if you were to be audited and asked, have you trained the employees in this? And you have that text blast. And by the way, you can put in request a response, something along the lines of reply yes if you understand, or if you have a question, reply with the question. You take their questions and send the answers back to the entire group. So you have the interaction that's required for it to be a training. And then, of course, with your Microsoft Office or any of your, whatever your email client is, that information comes back, you save it in a folder, and so you have additional training that's going on at all times. For the real small guys who don't really have a safety program yet, everybody knows there's an app for everything. And so the Safety Meeting app, that's exactly the name of it, is a full safety program in a box. It gives you your toolbox talks, your other training information, record keeping, and it's all done in a phone app. And then we can move up the line. PerVidi it's based for inspectors. So whatever your inspection process is, you have forms to do that. PerVidi takes that and takes it from paper-based to paperless. At Superior, we use this program called Pronoforms. And Pronoforms is an app that runs on the employees' phones, but from the office, behind the scenes on a computer, you can make a drag and drop form. So any form that you have, we have an inspection sheet for sidewalk protection. I can take all of those questions, create question boxes, and in about 10 minutes, completely turn that paper form into electronic version. And it will accept the foreman's signature on there to make it an official record. Insurance companies are a great resource for safety information. Okay, you can contact your insurance company's safety department, and I guarantee you they have a full library of information that's at your disposal. Allied has taken it one step further. They spun off a group of techies to put together what they call the Allied Safety Toolbox. And this thing is going places. Not only is it a place to store your records, but it contains full training programs with instructor information. So you can take your company's safety director, give him this information, your trainer, give them that information, and there's an entire program in there, soup to nuts, everything you need to be compliant. All right, so we talked about gadgets, so we'll do a little bit more software and then we'll get into the cool stuff. Weather is a big concern for scaffold companies. When we teach at in the SAIA Competent Person course, we give the statement, industry standard, no more than 25 mile per hour winds and no lightning. So 25 mile per hour winds, how do I determine the wind where I'm at? I look at my phone, I can see wind, which is at the airport. And so unless the job's at the airport Hilton, it's not really accurate information. So for about 25 bucks, we've got a wind speed indicator, and all you do is push the button, hold it up in the air, and it gives you the wind speed. And so, a really simple gadget, and it's amazing what can happen. In the big cities, gentle breezes coming in from the outside of the city, they rush into what are basically canyons of the skyscrapers, and there are areas within the city where gentle breezes become damaging winds. We had a scaffold damaged by wind about a year and a half ago, and so in part of the investigation I wanted to get wind speeds for that day. And so as I was digging, I stumbled across a map of Philadelphia, the city that I'm in. And there were 2 red zones. And it seems that the city of Philadelphia has 2 extreme wind zones. Guess where my scaffold was? Right at the apex of the Market Street corridor wind zone. And it was just like, I didn't even know it existed. So, good tip, just do wind speeds and your city name, and you may find out that you have some really dangerous areas. And so there's another factor of wind that we take into consideration and we have to track, and that's when we do an enclosure. So your engineer or the engineering firm that takes care of your scaffold design has said that this is a enclosed scaffold, it's properly tied, and it's good for winds up to something. Okay, and so it's usually 35, maybe 45 miles an hour. And so on average, you're going to be fine. But you have to have a safety plan or well, not a rescue plan, but a safety plan in terms of scaffold. And so if the engineer gives you an upper limit, then you have to wonder not wonder, but you have to be prepared to take this thing down in the event there's a problem, and that's what we do. And so we had a job at a hospital where we had to get this off in 35 mile per hour winds come up. And so the simplest form would be just put a weather station at the site, hook it into the internet, and then you've got on-site weather. Well, that's a bit much. Ham radio operators have done all of this for us. Ham radio operators are bigger geeks than Ali is. I know because I'm a ham radio operator. But you take that weather station, you hook it into a radio transmitter, and it broadcasts that information on a special radio frequency. And so if you go to aprs.fi, I won't give you what it stands for, but you're going to find thousands of trackers and weather stations broadcasting their information on the air. All of this GPS tracking was invented by a ham radio operator named Bob Berninga down in Washington, D.C. At any rate, you can bring up filters, and so we're going to bring up a filter and we're going to turn off everything except for weather. And so we're going to get a bunch of blue dots. These are home weather stations all over, in my case, the Delaware Valley, putting out weather information. So if I have a job north of Trenton, I can pick a local weather station just north of Trenton and find out what the wind speeds are. And so if we look here, at this time, at the time that I made this video, it was only 2.9 mile an hour with 6.9 mile per hour gusts. But if you have a job that you're concerned and high winds are forecast, this is how we handled that job. We threw that up on the computer screen, just let it run in the background. We were watching it. Fortunately, we never hit the magic number of 35 miles an hour, so we were okay. And here's a zoom out of a tri-state area, and you can see there are hundreds of them. If I zoomed out for the United States, the entire map would be blue. All right, so back to the other half of the SAIA Competent Person course, and it says no lightning. So lightning in the area is a problem. Now, everybody has a cell phone. Their cell phone has a weather app on it, and some of us have turned on the storm announcements. And the storm announcements are a great tool. The problem is that an iPhone 6 Plus costs about $900. If you're on the side of a building, in sunny Florida, my favorite, sun shining on your back, on the other side of the building less than a mile away, all hell is breaking loose, you want to know about it. And so this is actually the reason this entire presentation started. Somebody at the bar in Austin had a lightning detector in their briefcase. And I went, what is that? It's a lightning detector. And I said, A, what is a lightning detector? And B, why do you have one? Well, he's an umpire for local kids' baseball. And they issued this lightning detector so that if lightning shows up within 10 miles, he gets all the kids off the field. If it does it again within 6 minutes, he calls the game. And you would think that it's connected to some sort of system. but it isn't. It just measures the electrical potential in the air, and when there's a lightning strike, it tells you how far away it is. And so as kids, we were taught to count 1,000, 2,000 to see how far away it is. Every time a storm comes up, I play with this silly little thing, and it's reasonably accurate. So being a swing stage guy, if I'm on that side of that building and you can't see anything except what's right in front of you, which is the building, and what's behind you, if the storm's coming from the other way, I don't have to rely on my $900 phone. I can rely on my $23 lightning detector. And remember, when you're up on the building, it's a 10-minute ride to the ground on a 35-story building. Part of my job with Superior is to handle safety, not only in the field, but in the building. And so things like sound level are a concern. And so a sound level inspection can cost $700, $800 for them to come out and put equipment. And when it's all said and done, you're cleared and good to go. So you've spent $700 on it. This thing costs $14 and will give you a reasonably accurate reading. You can also do an app on your cell phone for a sound level indicator. And so we're looking for something around 85 decibels for a certain amount of time. Your phone's a good tool, except now you're gonna have to leave your phone in the noisy area for 8 hours and let it check to see what the levels are. So a sound level meter will at least give you an idea. So if 85 is my cutoff and this thing's sitting at 80, then I know, hey, you know what? It's reasonably certain that I've got an issue, and now let's call the professionals in and pay the money to get the survey done. Cameras. Anybody in here not have a camera on them right now? That's awesome. Okay. So cameras are come in a couple different forms. We've got our phones. Anybody use a separate camera for job site photos? It's almost nil. It's going away. I still use it on an investigation. It's better to use a camera. You get better resolution, and then you can take the memory card out of the camera, put it in the safe with the rest of the information from the investigation, because, well, nothing's going to happen for 1 year, 364 days anyway. All right, and so we have these cameras, and we're taking thousands and thousands of pictures. And so what do we do with them? There's thousands of pictures that most companies are not seeing that their employees are taking. And so we have some salesmen with us that are reasonably technically inclined, and then some that are not technically inclined at all. And so we had to figure a way to get their photos. And so since they're company assigned phones and we control them, we installed Google Photos. And what Google Photos is, it's a simple app for you to upload your photos to, and then they will store them. If you upload them at a certain resolution, they'll do it for nothing. And contrary to what everybody says, oh, your photos become the property of Google and they do whatever they want with them, if you set your photos to private, then nobody has access to them except you and anybody you give the link to. And so the concerns are it's not Big Brother watching. And so Google Photos is the simplest way to store them. And what we've done is we created a company account and we pointed 3 or 4 of the salesmen's phones at the account. So every picture they take is automatically uploaded as soon as the phone sees a Wi-Fi signal. And so this information goes up to the web. Now you know why Eric has such great pictures to put in the blog, because we're capturing all of that information. Job costing, Ali mentioned, and one way to do that is to actually keep an eye on what's going on the job site. Now there are a couple of companies out there that do this. The one that I like the best is Ox Blue. Now it's a full security camera. It can work in real-time video. It can work in time-lapse video. And it's cellular-based and self-contained. They even have a solar-powered version, so you don't have to worry about power. But basically, this thing comes on a pole, and you can clamp it to a scaffold, and then somehow disable the ability to take those clamps loose, and you can watch the job site. They have a stand with protective padding that can go on a roof across the street from a job site, and so you get a constant monitoring of the job going on. And this is a job that I found on Ox Blue's site, and it happens to have a stair tower in it. And so it's a time lapse of the entire job site. And this is just something that the software has made. The owner of this camera has the ability to go in, not only look at all of the individual pictures that were taken, but videos that were taken of the job site as well. And you can see every once in a while there's rain on the lens and everything. So if you really were trying to figure out what went wrong, where did we lose money on this job site, you can see weather, you can see all of the information you need to determine what's going on with that. All right, another kind of camera. This one is my absolute favorite. It's this little golf ball that's sitting right up here. And so it has two lenses on it, one on each side. And so if I set it like this lens covers more than 180 degrees, as does this one. So it overlaps. There's a computer in the camera that stitches that image together. So it sees 360 degrees at all times. And so if I just push the button here, wake it up. It's not going to fly. I wish it would fly around the room and take pictures, but there we go. And so it's now awake. All right, so we'll have some video to put up. So the Samsung Gear 360 records video 360 degrees at all times. When I was doing this presentation, putting it together, I discovered this camera. Immediately had to have it. It is $1.7 million. It's 150 bucks. And what can we do with it? Well, I put it on a selfie stick, and I took it out onto the job site that I had to do a safety inspection. And so what you're looking at is a video that I recorded off of my computer. I'm actually using my mouse to scroll. And so as I walk along, I'm looking for the things I'm normally looking for. The camera is seeing everything that I'm not seeing. And so you can pause the video when you get back to the shop. You can scroll. So I can check in front of me, I can check the decks overhead. So it's seeing everything that I didn't see and giving me the opportunity to go back and look, finish my report, my inspection for the job, and then store that video for later use if we get into a situation where someone's saying that something wasn't the way that we said it was. And if you notice, when I walked under there, we had gaps wider than 1 inch in the deck. And so I may not have seen that with my hard hat brim here, but I will see it when I get back to the office. And so for 150 bucks, you can get a 3-dimensional record of every job you walk. Dave was telling me yesterday that for an enclosure job, they do a log of every tie, and it's done by grid. So each upright is a letter, and each tie point is a number. And so you could walk the job with one of these cameras, and you don't aim it. You just walk. It sees everything. And so Dave could do a full tie inspection without physically having to sit and draw his grid. All right, so now we've got cameras. We've got all kinds of stuff. Google Photos will work, but what do we do with all this data? Videos are big. They're hard to store, and they used to be expensive, and you used to have to deal with them. You used to have, what am I going to do with this memory card? Do I have the right adapter to get it into the computer? We don't have to do any of that anymore. We talked about Google Photos. YouTube. What you were just watching, my inspection video, is on YouTube. It's in the company account on YouTube, and I can access it at any time. Nobody else can access it unless I give them the link, which you can do. Customer says, how'd the safety inspection go? Well, you've got some issues. If you go to this link, you can look at the video. And YouTube knows when I upload it that that is a Samsung Gear 360 camera video. And so it takes care of all of the things necessary to make it so that you can scroll in any direction and look around. You can also, on the bottom of that video, click the VR link. And if you were lucky enough to get one of Ali's cardboard goggles, you can throw your phone in it. And instead of having to scroll, you can turn and look and see what's going on and inspect the job from inside the virtual reality world. Google Drive, when you signed up for your Google Photos account, you also got a Google Drive account. It's just an online hard drive that allows you to store documents. So if you need a place to store this kind of stuff, it's there. I'm giving you the simple stuff. OneDrive is a Microsoft product, exact same thing as the Google Drive. It's just controlled by Microsoft. And then Office 365. How many people in here are using Office 365? Whole bunch of hands. All right. So 10 years ago, you didn't have Office 365. You had what was called an Exchange server. And you had a whole team of people running that Exchange server to make sure that things went well. And at some point in time, cloud-based storage became cheap and popular, and Microsoft invented Office 365. All right, so we have email, PowerPoint, all of the Office apps at our disposal as a result of having an Office 365 account. What we also have is SharePoint. And SharePoint, if you think about the name for a second, it's a point in cyberspace where you can share all your information with your entire workforce. And so if you already have Office 365, you already have SharePoint for free. Now, SharePoint is a seminar in itself. I could do 2 hours on SharePoint and only touch on what it can do. But I'll show you what we did with it. Ali and I needed to put together the technology and scaffolding presentation. And so I created, at just the click of a button and answering a few questions, what do you want to name it? Where do you want to keep it? And what do you want to put on the SharePoint site? And so I created the technology and scaffolding at the click of a button, and here it is. And so then I sent the link to Ali, and it gives us chat window so that we can send messages back and forth to each other. I can put as many people in the group as I want. It stores video, audio, it stores the presentation itself, and it gave us both the ability to click on the presentation, make changes to it, and hit the save button, and the other guy on the other coast could see instantly what it was. So if you have Office 365, look into SharePoint because it is an amazing tool. All right, another one, Ali showed the OneNote logo up there. What you're looking at is my actual notebook. OneNote is part of the Office app, but it's also a free app for phones. And of course, the portable desk, the iPad. And so you can create tabs, and then each tab can have subjects underneath of it. So every time I go to SAIA, I pop in a new tab and any notes that I've taken. SAIA, Suspended Competent Person Training, when I took it, I was taking notes. And so every tab that you've ever created and every subject that you've ever created since the beginning of time can be saved in the notebook. You can use it as a day planner and dump things, or you can keep it forever. And the cool part of that program is you can put programs inside of it. And so our PowerPoint presentation, if I made notes on it, I can drop the presentation into one of my notes. And so if I need to go back and make a reference to it, I can just click on it and it comes up. All right, so Photo In. Photo In is a construction photo app. It's designed to catalog your photos for you. Go to the job site, take a photograph within the Photo In app, put in a couple of keywords, 1234 Market Street, John Smith Plastering, and hit the button. Saves it. It knows where it is. So somewhere down the line, you may have 300 pictures from the John Smith Plastering job. All you do is type in John Smith. They all come up, 1234 Market, your job number, anything like that. It's not very expensive. Actually, I think Photo In might be very, very low cost. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum as far as what storage can do. Smartvid.io. It is a storage facility for your images and videos. The difference is it has smart technology running the show. And it will view your videos. It will take in the content. It will listen to what the people are saying. So if somebody in there says stair tower becomes one of the keywords for searching. And so 3 years down the line, you put in stair tower, and it'll show you every stair tower job you've ever done. It also recognizes wet cement, insulation, drywall, rebar. It has keywords. You can teach it what things are. So if you're building stair towers, you can teach it what a stair tower looks like, and then you don't need to tell it anything. Send up the picture of a stair tower, it files it under stair tower. So this is where things are going. Tracking of equipment. Everybody's seen the commercials for Tile. Put it on your keys. You find your keys. It uses Crowd's GPS and Wi-Fi. And so you put a tile on something, you walk down the street, people's smartphones pick up that tile and tell you where your stuff is. And so it's a simple way. You can put these things inside the battery packs of your tools. And so essentially for a tile account, you pay for the tile and the tracking is free. You can very simply track your tools. And some of the big companies are getting involved. Milwaukee makes the tick, and you can bolt this or silicone it to your bigger equipment. And the same thing as the tile. When it comes in contact with a cell phone, it reports in. All right. All right, so here's a piece of gear that this guy's marketing on a Kickstarter. And it was amazing to me that, he didn't have a safety line. He has a lot of faith in his product, but just think of what could be done with a piece of equipment like this in climb assist and material movement when we get to the point, where this thing hits the market. All right, this video, I hesitate to show it to you because it's wonderful, but if your industrial safety directors find out that this exists, it's going to get very expensive. So this gentleman here has I want to make sure I get the name right. Nope, don't have it in here. So it's I want to say 3M, and I believe it's one of 3M's spin-off companies. But he's hooked off, and he's got his lanyard on, but unfortunately, what he's holding onto is a little slippery, and so now he's in a precarious position. He has 14 minutes to get himself out of that harness because of suspension trauma possibilities. But he is conscious. He could use leg straps, or because he's wearing this particular piece of gear and he's less than 65 feet off the ground, just pull this red ribbon and down he goes. Self-rescue. How many people have to write rescue plans for their scaffold crews and can't figure out how to get a guy down from 65 feet in the air because of strange things going on at the job? This is a solution to the problem. Now, at the time that they came out and did a demo of this for me, it was available in lengths up to 65 feet. They were talking about going longer, and it cost about $700. Unfortunately, the adult entertainment industry is not going to help us with this one, so we'll just have to wait for supply and demand to bring the price down. Nope, not going to do it. All right, securing your tools. At the time I put this together, I just checked into some tool lanyards, and what I found out, we don't use it very often, but when you're working overhead using tools, obviously a falling tool could be deadly. And so I saw this proto skyhook demo, and I didn't want to have them be the only ones. And then so I threw in Aerogadine because we've used some of them. But yesterday here at the show, Alpha Source was here and had the same lanyard systems. And they've got a lanyard for every possible tool out there. They've got some pretty innovative tool bags. But if you look at the proto skyhook, this thing on the right here is a wristband. And so you put a wristband on each wrist. Your tool belts have receptors for these, right here. And so you're 100% attached to the tool. The tool is attached to your pouch. Your hands are free. All you do is reach down with your wrist and lift up. You're now positively attached to the tool. The tool cannot be unattached. It's either attached to your wrist, or the only way to get it off your wrist is slide your wrist back into that receptor, and it catches the hook. And so it can't be detached. And finally, the greatest tool for any scaffolder, especially somebody with bad habits like me, a company called Oxbox. Anybody have one of these? It's nothing like being up on a swing stage 350 feet in the air and having a self-contained, indestructible, dust-proof coffee maker. It's a Keurig, so you all know how to use it. It has its own onboard water, and the cord is retractable. It has crane lifting hooks so they can get it up to you. And so now that we're drinking all this coffee, we got to figure out what to do with it. So I guess I have to address it, but not with this. This is a technology seminar. So the Travel John will capture urine and turn it into a gel and make it spill-proof. Now, while I don't endorse peeing while on a side of a glass building 350 feet in the air surrounded by other glass buildings, when you gotta go, you gotta go. And not to leave the ladies out, there's the Go Girl. The Go Girl used to be known as the She-Wee, but I guess when the phrase Go Girl came, they figured that that's what they were gonna do. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. I don't have any kind of handouts for this stuff. It took hours to shave this thing down to a half an hour. There's lots of stuff we left out, but there's the email addresses. If we can help you with any, catch us here at the show, or just drop us an email at any time. Thank you very much. And the technology didn't kill us.
No, not today.
We are going, We are going to take a short break. We'll be back here at 10.